Good morning, good people, brothers, sisters, and beautifully defiant siblings in the movement. Welcome to the unapologetic voice of labor, equity, and action. This is CWA Our Power Radio Show, where we amplify the organizers, uplift the everyday workers, and honor the giants whose shoulders we stand on right here on KWALK 1140 AM and 106.5 FM in the heart of Houston, Texas. If you're rolling through H-Town or just fired up anywhere in the world, stream us live at KYOKradio.org on the CWA Strong app or catch the replay anytime by searching CWA Hour of Power on your favorite podcast platform. Because this space, this time, it's about us. That's right, it's about us. We're talking union contracts, organizing, victories, labor rights, human dignity, fair pay, and bold everyday resistance to injustice in every form. So whether you're on the job, in your car, at the kitchen table, or deep in the fight, lean in. Honk your horns if you stand with workers. Throw a fist up if you know your worth. Joining me today are the fire starters and truth tellers, Mikeya Jones, Sir Reginald Small, Timmia Wiley, David Marshall, Tay Akins. So buckle up, beloveds, because this power we build together. The power is ours. Let's get into it. Our union voices are ringing in every district from Alaska to Maine, Texas to Minnesota, Canada to Puerto Rico, because we don't play at CWA. Today's unlikely activist spotlight brings us into a workplace that doesn't look like a workplace at all. The gig economy, rideshare drivers, delivery workers, app-based laborers, and today we highlight Alex Rivera, a gig worker who never planned to be an activist, but became one when the system left workers behind. Alex Rivera started as a rideshare driver. And like millions of others, he was told he was, his own boss. That flexibility was freedom and that technology had created a new kind of opportunity. But that reality looked very different. Wages dropped without warning. Algorithms controlled schedules. Drivers were deactivated with no explanation and no appeal. Alex realized something critical. This wasn't flexibility, it was isolation by design. There was no break room, no HR, no union steward. Workers were intentionally kept apart so they couldn't compare pay, challenge unfair treatment, or organize. And for a long time, that strategy worked. Alex didn't wake up one day wanting to organize. He just started asking questions. Why did two drivers get paid differently for the same ride? Why were bonuses disappearing? Why did drivers absorb all the risk while corporations took all the profit? Those questions turned into conversations. Conversations turned into group chats. Group chats turned into meetings. And by 2025, Alex Rivera had become a visible voice advocating for gig workers, labor rights across the country. And what makes Alex an unlikely activist is that he didn't come from traditional labor spaces. He didn't have a union background. He wasn't a politician. He was just a worker who refused to accept a system where technology was used to hide exploitation. Alex began speaking publicly about algorithmic control, worker misclassification, and the need for basic protections, fair pay, transparency, and the right to organize. He framed gig work for what it really is, labor, and labor deserves rights. His activism sits squarely at the intersection of labor rights, civil rights, and economic justice. Gig workers are disproportionately immigrants, people of color, and working class people trying to survive. When those workers are denied protections, it's not innovation, it's exploitation. And for unions like CWA, Alex Rivera's story is a warning and an opportunity. A warning that corporations are trying to rewrite what work means, and an opportunity to organize where workers have been told they don't belong. Alex often says technology didn't break labor law, companies did. And that clarity has helped workers push back against the system designed to keep them silent. Alex Rivera doesn't call himself a hero. He calls himself a worker who got tired of being managed by an app with no accountability. And in standing up, he helped thousands of others realize they weren't powerless. They were just disconnected. This is Alejandro Rivera, proof that even in the most modern workplaces, the oldest truth still applies. When workers stand together, power shifts. Across the country, working people are finding their voice again at work, in their communities, and in the streets. From nurses demanding safe staffing to students and families walking out for justice, we're seeing what happens when people stop standing alone and start moving together. Today's flavor is collective power, how it's built, how it's protected, and why it matters whether you're clocking in, caring for your family, or fighting for your community. So pour yourself a cup, take a breath, and settle in for a few moments with Tay Akins with the Tea with Tay. Good morning, Tay.
Good morning, Errol, and thank you. Good morning, KYOK family, and good morning to my union family as well. Welcome to Tea with Tay, where we brew with care and spill the real. So let's talk about it. Right now, across the country, workers and everyday people are showing us what organizing looks like, not just in the workplace, but out in the streets and in our communities. From hospital staff advocating for safe working conditions to massive walkouts to stop government violence. Today's actions remind us when people act together, we can shape our future. Organizing at work means coming together with your coworkers to address everyday problems, wages, safety, job security, respect. When workers organize and bargain collectively, they turn a list of complaints into a list of enforceable rights. Contracts aren't just words on paper, they mean real protections, from guaranteed pay raises to rules that keep workers safe at the job. This is the core of labor strength. So let's talk about what's happening right now. In New York City, nearly 1,500 nurses walked off of their job January 12th, making this the largest nurses strike in the city's history. These nurses are represented by the New York State Nurses Association, and they're striking against three major hospital systems: New York Pes- Presbyterian, Montefiore, and Mount Sinai. So those are little hard ones, but after contract talks fell apart, they're calling for a minimum nurse to patient staffing ratio, better safety protections, fully funded benefits, and wages that keep up with the growing cost of living. This week, we're seeing organizing extend beyond the workplace into broader social struggles that affect working people everywhere. Across the United States, thousands participated in the Free America walkout on January 20th, leaving work and school to protest policies that many see as an attack on civil liberties, immigrant families, and democracy itself. In Minnesota, labor unions, community groups, and faith leaders are calling for a statewide day of action on January 23rd, urging general strike where people don't go to work, to school, or spend money as a way to demand justice and to put an end to the aggressive immigration enforcement. These movements aren't just protests, they're collective action that harness the same worker power that unions used across the bargaining table. Organizing at work gives workers tools to protect themselves in their job. Organizing outside of work links these job protections to community protections for families, for immigrants, for civil rights. When nurses strike for safety staffing, when students walk out for immigrant justice, when communities coordinate walkouts together, they are leveraging collective power in different arenas. The same basic idea is at work. People at work come together to make change, whether it's bargaining a contract for better working conditions or calling for collective refusal to participate in systematic injustice. Organizing creates leverage. Right now, people are demanding more than just changes to individual workplaces, they're demanding a fairer society. These actions remind us that collective power is real and that organizing, whether at the factory, the hospital, the school, or the city square, is how communities win improvement. Power isn't given, it's built by people standing together. So this was your spill for today. Today, we just don't talk about it. We build, This has been Tea with Tay, brewed with care and poured for the people. Back to you, Errol.
Well, it looks like Errol
Thank
said that
you.
he don't want to talk to us no more.
No, I'm here, and Tate, right there, that's the heart of it. When you talk about power not being given but built, you're naming something a lot of people feel, but don't always know how to put it in words. And what you did this morning, you connected what's happening at the bargaining table to what's happening in the streets. And that raises a deeper question. And if you don't mind, I want to stay here for a minute. What really does collective power really look like when working people decide they've had enough? Because this isn't just about contracts or walkouts in isolation. It's about how workers, how the families, how communities are starting to move together. So, Tay, I want to stay right here with you for a few moments and open this up as a conversation because what we're seeing today, what we're seeing in right now is we're watching people move together again. There's something different happening right now, and it feels familiar to labor, but bigger than any single contract. And Tate, that's the part that always sticks with me. We don't just walk, we build. Because when you really listen to what's happening right now at hospitals, in schools, in neighborhoods, this feels like more than isolated moment. It feels like people are remembering something we've always known in labor. And that power doesn't come from permission. It comes from people deciding together that enough is enough. And I want to sit in this just for a few moments. I don't want to rush past it because what you laid out wasn't just news, it was a pattern.
Yeah, and what's wild about it is that people are making these connections on their own. Nobody had to tell the nurses why staffing ratios mattered beyond the hospital. No one had to explain to the students why immigration raids affecting working families mattered. People are realizing that the same systems squeezing them at work are squeezing them in their communities as well.
Well, and when you say community, Tay, I mean, when I'm listening to Errol here, and the key component that rings with me is when we say that working people decide that they've had enough. And so that goes into the communities as well. When people have decided that they've had enough, they come together in take collective action, and they come together and they let the others know that they've had enough. That is what's going on, in my view, in Minnesota right now. It's like we're in our communities. We know that we don't like this. There's something wrong here, and we need to stand up and make our voices heard. We're just coming off of Martin Luther King's birthday. And when you think about what has always been a labor issue, union issue, Martin Luther King's last days of standing up for people, it was because of a union issue, but it wasn't just a union issue. It was about humanity and people being mistreated as humans. And this is what this movement that we're seeing right now is all about. And we have a right to protest and to stand up and say that we've had enough.
All right, come on, Mikeya.
Well, um, I think it's just that we were trained, just that basically things that we were trained that we had to do. And like Reginald said, what's happening now is that people aren't being complacent anymore. We're not sticking to the status quo or being quiet and demure. It's no more, it's no more, we're not being demure anymore. We're saying things out loud, and people are starting to connect the dots without waiting for permission. At one point, and we talked about this in the last few shows, is that, we saw that it was easier for things to change, or in what I would say for the bad, because everybody was so divided and in all these different silos. And Reginald, you're right. People are starting to bring back that sense of community and talk to each other and stand up for one another and recognize that your problem is my problem, and that we
Mm-hmm.
live and work and operate in these systems together.
Collectively.
And yes, collectively, and Mikeya, what you just said, that they're connecting the dots without waiting for permission. That's very important. They're moving without permission because there's always pushback when people move together. You hear the words like disruptive, unfamiliar, unreasonable, too far. But labor knows disruption isn't chaos, it's leverage.
Exactly. Every right workers have ever won came from something being disrupted. Nothing changed because people were polite and patient forever. The 8-hour day didn't come from silence. Safety rules didn't come from asking nicely.
And that's what gets lost in the conversation. People act like protesters and strikes and marches are emotional outbursts, but they're really strategic. That's what happens when the regular channels of resolve stop working.
Let's sit right there for a second because there's this false divide. Like organizing at work is legitimate, but organizing in the streets is somehow reckless. But what Taste laid out earlier, that's the same muscle being flexed in different places.
It really is. A contract is collective power written down. A walkout is collective power made visible. Both say the same thing. We are not disposable. And I just want to say that I had this conversation with my son about the walkout because in Arizona, that's where I'm at, they had the walkout at their school as well. And I let him make his own decision. Like, do you want to participate? And you give me your reason. And he told me that everything that he's been taught as far as collective bargaining, grassroots organizing says that it starts with the youth. So yes, they're going to see us when we walk out of our schools because we know this is wrong. And our parents sometimes can't do the walkouts and they have to go to work. And we've talked about this on our journey as far as, civil rights and how things happen. So I was pretty proud at that moment that he sees that this makes them visible. You will not treat people any kind of way.
And uncomfortable, Tay, is, it's on either side, you can be uncomfortable. And it's okay. You can be uncomfortable for the same reason. I mean, if you go back historically and you think about a sit-in at a lunch counter, which changed things, the person serving the coffee was uncomfortable because their boss said that it's against the rules to serve certain people. If you're on the other side of that counter and you're in the sit-in trying to invoke change and you don't know whether coffee's going to be thrown on you, that's uncomfortable as well. But it's all for a reason. And sometimes we need to shake up the status quo and make things a little bit uncomfortable to invoke change.
Right. And I think that's what scares people who benefit from things staying the same and staying exactly how they are. I am one of those people that have a problem with people who only want to do things that are comfortable. I have a problem with people that always say that confrontation is negative, right? Like there is positive confrontation. Like if I don't tell you or if we aren't expressing ourselves as to what is wrong, then, sometimes people may not know that it's wrong. You get what I'm trying to say? Like if you do not address things in a polite and respectful way, they won't happen. And people, again, these are one of those terms where that people have turned into something that's like agitating and aggressive and negative, and it's not. It's like being confrontational, again, in a respective and a way that comes from, education and wanting just real live understanding and clarity is not a negative thing. Like we need to confront things in order to evoke positive change.
Yeah, and Mikeya, you're absolutely correct. Because a lot of times when we hear the words, and I said it earlier before, disruptive and unreasonable, and you're going too far, and one of these words right here is now is not the time. How long are we going to continue to say now is not the time, or somebody's being disruptive? All we are talking about, or when workers are up against various things, is equity, being fair. And whenever you start seeing people are afraid of something, trust me, the actions are grabbing attention, and to all activists, actions matter.
Yeah, and let's be real. There are some risks. People listening right now, some are probably thinking, "How that sounds powerful," but I got bills, I got kids, I can't afford to lose my job. But they have to understand that there's been many folks that have sacrificed and paid the ultimate price to get some of the rights and benefits we have. So true sacrifice isn't given till it hurts, but it's given to the joy of purpose replaces the pain of giving up something. But at the end of the day, that fear is a reality.
And let me
And
jump right in before Timmia
hmm
comes in. I
hmm
just want to say it from a perspective that August of 2024, when we went out on strike in District 3 for 35 days, yes, we were out there on the lines. We never thought that we would be making history by breaking having one of the longest strikes. And then we go back to work. We stood up for our rights. Yes, it was powerful. And then in March of 2025, here we are, my entire office being closed. 100 workers, and that's what some these corporations are doing. Yeah, we're standing up for the rights. Yes, we have to make a difference. We have to, because if we have to fight for something, because we don't fight for something, we're gonna fall for anything. So we have to stand up and make that difference. And consequences are actions of these corporations are going sometimes to affect us. But by God, I sure do feel better that I stood up and made a difference, not just for myself for a few months, but all those other workers, all of those other 17,000 employees in District 3. And because we stood up, it is a move across the country that the others are going to stand up in CWA. I digress.
That you said a word, because that the fear is real. And we don't do anybody any favors by pretending that it's not. Stuff is happening every day and it's happening all around us.
And you are absolutely correct, Mia. But here's another truth. We're already paying the price for staying silent. Unsafe jobs, the low wages, the burnout, fear of immigration enforcement, healthcare tied to employment. The risk didn't start with organizing. Organizing, guess how people reduced it together.
And that's the key word. The key word for it is together. Organizing doesn't eliminate risk, and I want everyone to understand that organizing doesn't eliminate risk. It redistributes it, so no one person is standing alone. We've got to stand together, stand up in times like these. Come on, Reginald.
And that's why employers fight unions so hard, because we are the masters at organizing, mobilizing around certain issues. And guess what? We're not just mobilizing and organizing around contracts. We're going into the human rights world. We're dealing with issues that impact our members. So yes, they're going to fight unions hard, because once workers stop being isolated, then everything changes.
Right.
These skills, Errol, that we learn as union folk, as union leaders, they don't just stay here in the union. We use these same skills in our community, these same powers to move people, to motivate people into standing up and taking actions against injustices.
You're absolutely correct. And we're using what we've learned in our human rights department. We're using it, as you said, everywhere, from sea to shining sea. That's what we're here for. And if you don't think as a union member human rights affects you, yes, it does. You are part of human rights. And really, I keep thinking about this moment in history. I keep thinking about this moment that we're in right now. And years from now, people are going to look back and ask what folks did when pressure was coming from every direction. And I know we always hear, what side are you on? Are you on where are you standing? Are you standing for right? Are you standing for wrong? But guess what? When we all are dead and gone, somebody's going to say Reginald Small stood for right, Errol Minor stood for right, David Marshall stood for right, Tay Akins stood for right, Timmia Wiley stood for right, Mikeya Jones stood for right, CWA stood for right. Am I preaching good this morning?
You sure are.
Yeah, you on fire this morning, Errol.
Woo.
And
Come on,
I agree.
Mikeya.
I agree with you. I mean, that was a tough act to follow, but I agree with what you're saying, right? Because it's going to be like, especially with today, and we all know that the internet is forever, right? But they're not going to ask or think about like what we posted, right? Or what came across the screen. They're going to ask us like what we built, what structures, what things are in place still after we're gone that we put forth to help them and to invoke, change for the future.
Well, and movements don't survive on moments alone. They survive on relationships, structure, patience, and that change that you were talking about is built on consistency rather than perfection. It's about the small actions that you can take that compound over time that'll get us there.
And that's why I keep saying this isn't just about reacting to the latest crisis or whatever's happening right now. It's about building something that lasts longer than outrage. We need permanent change, not temporary coddling or buffering. Something that happens long term.
Did you say temporary coddling?
Now, that's what it is. They only give us a little bit, enough to pacify. Like my 2 year old nephew, when he going through something, you give him the pacifier, it soothes him for a little bit, but once you pop it out, he still got the same problem. We're just being coddled right now.
But you guys, you got to remember, burnout is real. It's a real thing. And if people don't feel supported, they disappear. And I think that's what happens to quite a bit of our place freedom fighters. And the system counts on that because they bank on that. It's a game to them to burn us out and to keep us feeling downtrodden and defeated. That's what union busters are for. That's what all these millions and millions of dollars that they spend, that each corporation spends on union busting. That's what they do. They have got it down to a science. We have to.
And I think. I'm sorry, Timmy. Go ahead. I
No, I
apologize.
was just gonna say we have to look out for one another. We have to check in on one another, and support one another. That's all.
You're right, and I think Reginald has thrown his finger up a couple of times because it looked like he got something burning on the inside.
Well, it's because burnout is so real. That is why we have to constantly work to develop and create new activists so that those on the front line can go and take a rest, and then there's another line of people coming. So it's not on one person. So shame on us if we're not creating and finding new activists to stand with us so that we are the one who is facing temporary burnout, because burnout, you go rest for a minute and you rejuvenate yourself and then you come back to the line is the way that's supposed to work.
And
I appreciate that you said that because I do feel, I'm sorry, but I'm glad that you said that, right? Because again, we had that conversation before about like passing the torch while it's still lit. And I do think that it's super important to not only engage other people to become activists, but to also, like you said, Timmia, to support them, right? Like we all need to work at this together in more than one way. right? We need to make sure that people are okay in more than one way. Like, we need to make sure that people are okay mentally. We need to make sure that people are okay on the line when they're fighting things. We need to make sure that people are okay at work. We need to make sure that people are okay in their refrigerators, in their pockets. Like, we need to care for each other in more than one way. And like we said before, like, these are, again, human rights issues. And we need to start caring and looking at people as a human being overall, not just a worker, not just an activist, not just your neighbor, but as a human being overall.
That's true.
My. Y'all woke up ready this morning. And really organizing becomes an act of care. Care for the workers, care for the families, care for the future, and care for the activists. Come on, Reginald.
So, and you know what I'm noticing, what I'm seeing, what I'm witnessing, what I'm actually experiencing right now is more conversations happening quietly. And that's not a criticism. That's a good thing because everyone is not going to carry a bullhorn. But the conversations that we have in our break rooms, at our churches, and yes, at our kitchen tables, because all of our families are not on one accord, and we spend so much time arguing on the small things that we're missing our commonalities. So those places actually matter. The break rooms, the church, the kitchen table. That's where movements actually start. Movements start with a little bit of information that is resonated. It's like that mustard seed that's planted and it grows.
They do, you know what? Movements do start like that, but it's almost like kindling on a fire. You know, you start with a little bit and then it starts growing. You add more wood and it grows, and you add more wood and it grows. But then you have the corporations that want to stomp that fire out. We have to, and people get crushed when that happens. We have to, I don't know how we protect the younger generations so that or is it the older generations that we have to protect to keep them in the fight?
We have to be vigilant.
We got to be vigilant. I
overall.
like, okay.
Like, just across the
Okay.
board,
Mhm.
Come on,
everybody
Reginald.
has
Well,
to stand up for everybody.
I think we live in a society where we think that I don't know, that every battle, every little skirmish that you get in, you have to win or lose it. No, you just make progress in it. There may not be
That's
an
good.
outright victory in it, but you let them know that you've been there, that you left a bruise, that you made a difference, that you were there, and let them know you're coming back for the next one.
Mhm. Is it
What you say?
okay? Mhm.
Go ahead, Timmia.
No, is it okay to say, I got bruised a little bit, I got pinched a little bit?
Yes. Yeah, but you're better for it. You're stronger
Uh-huh.
for it, and you are wiser for it. And the next time you go, you might not get that bruise. You might do the bruising.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm sorry, I'm jumping right in here. You said something good too, Reg. You said progress. And I thought about it. I'm like, you know
Yes.
what? This work is called we're in the progressive community. Like, the whole goal is to move forward, right? The goal isn't to necessarily win, because what can you really win when it comes to human? Like, it has to be, we have to look at it that way. I'm glad you said it. We have to look at it as just moving forward in the right direction, moving towards, commonalities and like just things that are just good overall. It's not a win or a lose. And I think that's probably maybe something that we have to unpack just later as a society, that we're going into these battles as if we're fighting like just a battle, and it's not just a war of progress and moving forward. Because when you think about it, right, like when you go to war and wars are over, you still have to rebuild. You still have to move forward. You still have to bring people together after that. Like, you still have to live and work together, which means it's never done. The work is never done. But as long as you're moving forward, like you said, and progressing towards something good, you're winning.
Yeah, I'm always reminded, Mikeya, when I say that, well, there's something that's a scripture, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I'm not a theologian, but it's a great scripture for activists. And it says, "Be not weary in well doing, for in due season," which might not be right now, but in due season you shall reap. But there's another part there, "if you faint not," meaning if you don't give up, if you stay in the fight, you will reap it.
Well, thank you, Reginald, because I'm about to use that when I teach this next class. Thank you so kindly.
I didn't write it. I read it.
I just never thought about using that particular scripture in an activist realm. But thank you. It's going to be a part of that leadership class. Trust me. All right, come on, Mikeya.
Well, that was, I just think that again, people are listening again, people are reacting again, and we're doing things together. And I'm super proud of that.
And as you all said, as you were explaining how power is actually built, it's slow, intentional, and rooted. It's not rushed, kind of like tea. Don't rush it or you'll ruin it.
And that's a word to end on right there. What I appreciate about this conversation is that nobody here is pretending that it's easy, but nobody is pretending it's impossible either. That is what our power is all about. Not talking at people, but thinking and building together.
And reminding folks that collective power isn't some abstract idea. It's people choosing each other over and over again.
That's right, Tay. This conversation doesn't end here. It continues wherever people decide to stand together. You're listening to CWA Our Power right here on KYOK 1140 AM and the all-new 106.5 FM. If you're on the go, you can take us with you by visiting kyokradio.org and pressing the Listen Live option. Tune in live every Thursday at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific on kyokradio.org, the CWA Strong app, or your preferred podcast player. Search for CWA Hour of Power on your favorite podcast player. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at CWA National Human Rights to stay connected. Share your thoughts and join the conversation. Up next, we have the Marshall Minute with David Marshall. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Errol, and good morning, family. Welcome again to the Marshall Minute. Is your glass half full or half empty? The way you answer that may have an impact on your mental health and your physical well-being. It's human nature for us to focus on negative. I mean, how many times during the winter when it's raining, you look out the window and thought, man, I hate this weather, or I'm just sick of having to stay indoors. It can be easy to slip into negative thinking patterns and neglect to see the positive side of life. But changing your perspective and reframing that negative outlook is possible and can improve your overall health. Staying positive amidst negativity involves limiting the negative input, actively cultivating gratitude and joy, practicing mindfulness and self-compassion, focusing on controllable actions and solutions while maintaining healthy routines like sleep and exercise, and setting boundaries with draining situations or draining individuals. It's about shifting focus to what you can influence and nurturing your own well-being to build resilience. So here are some mindset shifts. First thing, practice gratitude. Keep a journal or a list of things that you're thankful for, and retrain your brain to see the good. You focus on control. Identify what you can change and let go of what you can't. Positive self-talk and affirmations. Counter negative thoughts with kind, realistic, and encouraging words. Find the silver lining. Look for small positives or lessons in even the toughest situations. Be present and be mindful. Use meditation or deep breaths to stay grounded, not dwelling on past negativity or future worries. And here are some actions you can limit. You can limit the negative input and reduce your consumption and unfollow negative people on social media. You could also curate your circle, spend more time with positive, solution-oriented people, and set boundaries with the chronic complainers. And then engage in joyful activities. Dedicate your daily time to hobbies, nature, or anything that brings you peace and happiness. And then help others. Volunteering can shift focus outward and foster a connection. And then set routines. Predictable schedules for self-care, like sleep and healthy eating and exercise, really build stability. And when you feel overwhelmed, just release the frustration safely. Find a healthy way to vent. If you need to take a walk or work out or talk to a trusted friend, And don't hesitate to ask for help or seek support from professionals or loved ones if needed. And then you can always change your scenery. Go outside, go for a walk, take a vacation, or simply just move to another room. So remember, life is full of challenges, and it can sometimes feel like putting things in perspective and seeing the positive in the day to day is hard. But living that way can impair your mental and physical health, impact those around you, and worsen your quality of life. And so when you're able to shift your perspective and gain a more positive outlook, you're better able to take on and enjoy life. And this has been David Marshall, and you've been tuned into the Marshall Minute, where living well is the greatest act of love. Back to you, Errol.
Thank you so much, David. You're listening to KYOK 1140 AM and the all-new 106.5 FM. If you're on the go, you can take us with you by visiting KYOK Radio and pressing the Listen Live option. Tune in live every Thursday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific on KYOKradio.org, the CWA Strong app, or your preferred podcast player. Tune in live every Thursday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time on your favorite podcast player. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at CWA National Human Rights to stay connected, share your thoughts, and join the conversation. Up next, we have Mikeya Jones coming in with Generations, Grief, and the Work We Carry. Good morning, Mikeya.
Good morning. Before we do that, Reginald, did you still have something to say?
I did have something I wanted to ask David. His minute was so impactful this morning and so well needed. One of the things that David, you mentioned on here is that actions that we can take to help protect ourselves is to limit negative input. And one of those things is reduce news consumption and unfollow negative people on social media. And I'm just wondering, and that's certainly great information, and I get it. But I'm so wondering that are we in a society now that we're not limiting, we're turning it off, and we're becoming unaware of what's actually going on in the world. Do you think limiting and stopping news is causing that? Because I'm having what I call bus stop conversations with people, and I am just amazed at that they don't know anything about current affairs. So I know that's a little off your subject, David, but I just want to throw that out there.
Well, I can tell you just from my perspective, and I'm old school when it comes to that. And if birds of a feather flock together, and you show me your friends, I'll show you your future. I'm from that mindset where it's if you're constantly in the negative, you're going to be a negative person. You hang out with drug addicts, you're going to eventually be a drug addict. And so limited is more of my angle, not completely being oblivious, but don't make that all your consumption. And we're seeing it not just in politics. I mean, even with children in social media, they're a little more hyperactive, in school because they're not getting the instant gratification from what social media and the internet does when they get into regular, library settings or, where they have to act a certain way and have to be still and not be entertained the whole time. So I just think that if we just limit it to where, you're not consumed by it, that you have a better attitude towards, meeting and having those interactions with folks.
I'm going to just jump in right here because I don't know if I agree 1,000%. I think that too much consumption of anything can be negative. And anything, like I said, too much of anything can obviously be, detrimental. But I think what Reginald is saying is that there has to be we have to find some kind of balance where we're able to stay educated, stay informed, and stay aware, but then also be able to turn certain things off to, just be well in our own mindset. Because the world is on fire right now. And like that show, like there's little fires everywhere. And so we can't go and put out every single fire without being exhausted, but at the same time, we can't turn a blind eye, right? As if these things aren't happening. And so I guess that can kind of move us into our next segment where we're going to talk about like the grief that we carry, because when things burn, we lose things. And so we're just going to slow down the pace a bit, because the work that we do in organizing and fighting injustice, defending workers, it all carries a lot of weight. And that weight doesn't land the same on everybody, especially across generations. And some of us, we're trained to push through pain. Some of us are trained to like, not show weakness and just like go through it and get through it. And, sometimes that difference creates tension too, like within your own household, your own communities, your own family structures, your own workplaces, and even inside your own movements. And so we're going to talk about, something real, which is stress and grief and disappointment, and how we handle it and how that shaped who we've become when we came up.
And for many of us, especially older activists, that the message was simple: keep moving. You gonna help me here, Reginald? You don't stop
I think
because
you took a swipe at me, Errol. I'm gonna let you finish your sentence, and then I'm gonna take my position. You go for
all
it.
right. So you don't stop because you're tired. You don't stop because you're hurting. The movement doesn't pause for your feelings.
Well, and that did create strong people, but it also created people who learn to carry everything internally. You handled your grief by working harder, and you handled your disappointment by staying silent.
Meanwhile, younger generations grew up with like more language around mental health, like, people my age and younger, Reginald, we're more likely to say, this is too much, I'm not okay. A lot of us say like, okay, I'm overstimulated. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's so much going on, like I can't like focus. And that's not weakness, it's awareness.
It is. And I just want to jump in there real quick. I think that they teach that in school where nowadays where we didn't have that education in school because my daughter, for example, she's very aware of her mental health. And I didn't teach her that. I should have, but she learned that from somewhere, and I'm thinking that she learned that in school. There are a lot of like this younger generation, they have the vocabulary and they have the wherewithal to be able to name what's going on with them. And they have the sense enough, I should say, to step back and take time where our generation doesn't always do that.
So I want to throw in something right here, because when you're saying it, many of us, and I'll say many of us activists who have been in the fight longer than others, and I chose to say that other than using the word older activists, because we can't separate our activists because we need all of them. That message that you talked about was clear. It was keep moving. It's because we didn't have a choice but to keep moving. There were so many things going on that if you were an activist, regardless of your position and your how long you had been in the fight, you had to keep moving. And even I still believe that message is clear today about keep moving, but we understand mental health because we're talking two different things here. Mental health, now we are aware of mental health and we should be, and I'm so grateful to hear that it's being taught in school how to take care of yourself. Fortunately, I was in a home with a mental health provider, so I knew the value of mental health and to take care of self. Because if you don't take care of self and you face this burnout that we've talked about, you can't help anyone else. It's like the airline industry: you put on your mask first so you can help those around you. So I'm encouraged that mental health is a part of a conversation now, that we are actually applying mental health and mental stability to this as activists.
And those who know me know I'm big on mental health, and I do take those days to turn off the phone and I will not answer any questions. So I guess I would be in new group who listen, it's I believe that it's okay to not be okay. And let's talk about the systems that we're organizing against are heavier too. We have the social media pressure, we have the economic instability, the constant crisis. So the emotional loads stack up faster. So yes, we need to be aware of what we're actually going through and say it's okay to not be okay or take those days or feel this way.
And Tay, I'm glad you said that too, because there was like a meme online that says like as a millennial, this is our like 900th like tragic once in a lifetime crisis. And it's like literally as for a person, my age that, I basically came of age with the internet, right? So as the internet moved through what it has now become, so have I and so has my life, right? So literally every major thing that has happened has been like highlighted for me because you can't escape it, right? Like as a older I don't know if I'm an older millennial. I'm not gonna say that, but as
No, because I'm an older millennial.
okay,
So you're not an older millennial.
as a millennial on the cusp, I'll say, I, have so many things that I've experienced where it's like, okay, so if I see it in real life, right? When I walk away from like, and this is not always like such a like huge catastrophic event. This could be something that happened at school. Like there could have been something that happened at school, and it's like when you went home from school, it didn't just end there. No, like I go back to like MySpace and Black Planet days, and the days where Facebook was only for college students and Instagram was only for celebrities. Like, like there were like you were all, and then I remember like I'm the generation of like camera phones. I remember when phones didn't even have cameras on them. You know what I mean? So everything's recorded, everything's given to you in real time, and you're just inundated with all of these things all the time. And so, you know, when people say, why are you affected by this? Is because I'm going to be affected by it in one way or another, right? Whether I want to or not, because there's no way for me to get away from it. So it does affect me because I'm gonna have to see it. Like if somebody, if on a television, if somebody's getting, I remember, like I said last week, if somebody got beat on the television, they would turn it off. Like we wouldn't see it, right? But nowadays, if the news monitors it or if the news censors it, it's not going to be censored online. Or if the social media platform censors it, somebody, is going to share it on their own personal something. And then so it's like I'm affected by these things because I'm compassionate and there's no way to escape them. And so, the answer might be because, these things didn't just start today for me. Like they've literally followed me my whole life. And, if we're honest about it, activism comes with loss.
You're absolutely correct. Lost contracts, elections, court cases, burned bridges, and sometimes even losing people.
Well, and disappointment, hits different depending on, how you were taught to process it. Some of us shut down emotionally, some of us shut down physically, and some of us speak up and lash out.
And if we're not careful, the system wins, not by beating us, but exhausting us. They want to exhaust us and run us down.
Especially when it's something that doesn't change overnight. That's not just disappointment, that's cumulative trauma.
Yeah, and when we don't acknowledge that, right, we end up mislabeling pain as like laziness or disloyalty or lack of commitment, and that's not it, right? Like we have to be careful before we name things and categorize things. And like it's like we're talking through this, like we have to allow people again to be people and to process and to move through things the best way that they can without the pressures. Because if I'm already fighting against something, if I'm already trying to enforce and invoke change outside, I don't need to have to fight battles at home as well.
I think we're living in this society where it's like this, get over it. You just need to get over it. You need to pull yourself together and you need to move on. So and that's not a real way to actually process stuff. We can't sometimes just get over it. Processing, yes, we do need to process, but You don't get to tell me how much time it takes me to process my election loss. You don't get to tell me how much time it takes me for grief to let go of me, because I've lived long enough to know that we don't let go of grief. Grief has to let go of us. So you don't get to be that time clock for me.
Well, Reggie, I don't know if we're living in a generation where we're saying you need to get over it. I think that was more so in maybe our parents' generation, and we have a little taste of it, and now our children are in this generation to where they are acknowledging the mental stresses, the sensories and stuff like that, and we're acknowledging they are really going through, and they're living in a society or in a time where it's just one calamity after another, and they don't have an opportunity to breathe.
I don't think they have an opportunity to breathe, but we probably differ here and probably don't have enough time to really talk about our differences. But I believe if we're talking, I mean, I know we're talking grief and we're talking other getting over stuff, but there was a time, even in contracts, we had 5 days to grieve, to have bereavement time. Now we're expected to show back up to work in 3 days. We had time to process a horrific scene that we saw on TV. Now we don't, because there's another horrific scene coming in 2 days. So it's replaced by something else. I think we're more in that microwave society where it's more get over it and move on. Whether we're saying that or not, that's what we're expected to do.
I'm glad you said that, because we're going to talk about how this shows up in a workplace, and that's exactly how it shows up in the workplace, right? Both of you are right. Errol, you're saying
Well,
that
thank
people are
you.
trying to
I already
take
knew that.
people are trying to, take time to process, right? And just be realistic about what's going on in their lives and put themselves first. However, Reginald, like you said, in the workplace, right? The places where we have to earn our money and the places where we basically have to be in order to survive, and what this capitalist society is now, we have to show up there. And so if they say now we only have 3 days to grieve, then we only have 3 days to grieve. So no matter what you're going through, you have to figure out how you're going to present yourself. I'll say, like, not be yourself, but how you're going to present yourself in this space around other people, and be efficient and do your job and earn your money, because that'll be a whole nother thing that you have to grieve. Like, grief isn't always necessarily when it comes to like a fatality or a loss of a soul or a person. Like, you can grieve losing your job, right? Like, you can grieve losing your income. You can grieve, not being able to have your own vehicle anymore because you can't afford to pay for repairs. Like, there's more than one form of grief. And again, in the workplace, we have to be really cognizant about that, because there's so many different moving pieces and moving parts. And like you said, your boss and these corporations and these companies, they're going to expect you to show up to make that dollar for them, no matter what's going on.
That was a mouthful. That was definitely
that was
that was definitely
and
a mouthful. And this is a conversation that we probably need to delve into just a little bit more, because there's so much to be said, because we're literally talking grief, and then we're talking about loss and defeats and all of that kind of stuff, which is so applicable to today. As we come up into election season for our union in particularly, these seats that you run for, there's going to be someone who wins the seat and someone who does not. How do we move forward?
Yes, yes. And I think if it's okay, maybe we'll pick back up with this on next week right here. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, we will. And so basically I'll leave with this and then let you do your closing, Errol. So what I want to say is that labor should never require people to sacrifice their mental health to prove their commitment. And right now, we're fighting systems that want to divide us, numb us, and deplete us in any way and capacity that they can. And taking care of our mental health and emotional well-being isn't a distraction from the work. It's how we sustain it. Okay. And if we want
Mhm.
strong movements, we need whole people. So yeah, go ahead and close this out, and we'll be back next week to finish this up.
All right. Thank you, Mikeya. An hour is not long enough to be with you, and a week is too long to be away from you. You have been tuned into the CWA Human Rights Hour Power broadcast. I hope something you heard today has inspired you to take action toward creating a positive change in the world. Every person has the power to make a difference, no matter how small, and by working together, we can create a world where human rights are respected and valued. So I encourage each of you in the listening audience to reflect on your role in promoting human rights to effect change in your communities and beyond. Know that you're not alone in your quest for a more just and equitable world. When faced with injustice, it can be easy to lose hope and give up. But remember, justice may be slow like the truth, but when it finally comes, it will stand. Until next Thursday, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, right here on KYOK 1140 AM and the all new 106.5 FM, KYOKradio.org. See you next week.